What are the biggest mistakes you see people doing in the gym?
It's actually caring about the wrong things, I reckon. I think that there's a really massive overemphasis on things that are the minutiae of training and injury risk, and, you know, like, no one focuses on things like progressive overload or training intensity. Like, I don't get many questions about that. When I was coaching, or when I have people coming into the gym, into my clinic with pain or injury, they're always like, I know that because of the way that my hips were sitting within this certain rep of a deadlift, that's probably what's contributed to my sore back, and nothing to do with the fact that they hadn't deadlifted for 3 weeks and then have come in with a RPE 9 out of 10. So training is
hitting a 1 rep.
Pretty much a 1 rep max, right?
Yeah.
And in terms of biggest mistakes that I see in the gym is just people focusing on the wrong things. Because there are certain foundational principles to ensure that you're continuously progressing, like train with adequate intensity, progressively overload, eat properly, sleep properly, deal with your stress, and have stress management techniques. But whether the line of pull of your lat pull down is 100% aligned with the lower fibers, or whether it's, not, is not really going to make any difference. And so a lot of what I see that is wrong within the gym is not necessarily people lifting with bad form, but people caring about the wrong things. And I think that's probably,
Where do you think that comes from? Because I 100% agree with that.
I think that actually can come from social media, and the fact that we need to be continuously repackaging things that are new, and that are novelty, because it grabs attention, and because if you have the secret sauce, then everyone should listen to you, and you'll become as popular as possible, and people won't necessarily listen to, things outside of that. And there's only, like what we spoke about before, there's only so many times that you can say, sleep well, eat properly, eat adequate protein, drink your water, de-stress. And there's only so many different ways that you can say that. And people will say, oh yeah, but I already know that. Give me what really matters. And so a lot of my job is actually to just get people doing the basics. And it's not about having any secret sauce or I've got the trick, but it's about having structure and accountability. And I think that it comes from a place of social media where we have to always be creating things that are novelty in order to maintain attention. Because I only made 2 reels about sleep, and then I was like, okay, well I've exhausted that. Same as you were talking about how you can only talk about fat loss so many times.
Yeah.
Because if you've got the same audience, they already get the picture.
And it is the basics. And there's only so many times you can say that. And we've sort of contemplated sometimes about, going down a rabbit hole and just saying this one thing is going to change your life. But it's never that one thing that's actually going to... It's all of the above. And
that's the difficulty with social media, because unless you have a hook or a caption that pretends that you have that special sauce, no one is actually going to engage in the content that you're making. And so what I try to do when I make my content is do something controversial for the caption. For instance, I did one recently was, here's what to do if your hip is out, because everyone thinks that their hip's out from their sleeping wrong. And then the actual caption was it's probably not out. It's,
So that sort of led into my second thing I wanted to bring up. For everybody listening, where can they find you on social media?
Cool. So my Instagram handle is pain.coaching. I mainly use Instagram. I dabble with TikTok a little bit, but I just don't think I can commit any more time to social media. Pain.coaching is where I do, I'm an osteo, so I do online pain coaching for people with chronic pain or struggling with chronic injury. Essentially people that are struggling to get into the gym because it's more of a complex case where they often get injured, or they're struggling with like a chronic pain condition, whether it's something super complex like fibromyalgia, or something a little bit more basic like a recurring chronic lower back pain. So my demographic is generally I help those people engage in physical activity because, you know, the mental health benefits of physical activity, this is a sort of a population that needs that, and also a population that isn't able to necessarily go into a clinical setting. And so that's why I do that online as well, to sort of help people where they're at in their own homes through an online platform.
So why pain coach? Because that's I seen that, and that could be interpreted as many different ways.
Yeah.
So how did you come up with that name? Or why?
I see myself, especially through having a personal training background, as more of a coach than a clinician. I think that the sort of over-medicalisation of my field can make it inaccessible to people that need it. And like, as an osteo specifically, like, I wish that we worked in a setting a little bit more like OTs, where we actually went out and met people where they needed to be met and helped them on their terms. But I try to get it a little bit further away from clinical and into a coaching space, essentially, because my manual therapy side of things, so I do massage, I do cupping, I do needling, all that kind of thing, but that's not where I see the real value at in what I do. It's actually my knowledge and how I can help people make lifestyle changes and coach them through their pain and their perspective on pain. Because, for instance, your beliefs about the resiliency and resiliency of your body and the state of it is possibly a greater predictor of whether you're going to be in pain than if you actually have a disc bulge. So for instance, like, they've done studies, let's say you take 100 people, do 100 spine MRIs, 50 people have no pain, 50 people have lots of pain, you'll see the same amount of degenerative disc disease, degenerative joint disease, disc bulges. So but in the 50 people with pain, you will see a trend of that they are generally quite pessimistic and sort of feel like their body is quite fragile and not resilient. So it's more of a coaching role than it is a treatment role in my eyes.
So let's wrap all that up. Say somebody who's listening who, say, has a little bit of back pain or, you know, hasn't really exercised before. They want to get in the gym, they want to start exercising, but they're a little bit afraid of starting. What advice or how would you recommend they get started?
Look at their why and what their overarching goals are, and break that down into minuscule pieces. Like, anything is far better than nothing. When it comes to pain and people worrying about pain and whether they can engage in physical activity, the first piece of advice that I'd give them is to go get assessed by a professional, because if they give you the go-ahead, no matter what kind of pain and worry about that, you can actually engage in physical activity. And just like, look at where you want to go, break it down into minuscule pieces and just take that first step. And whether that's walking more or doing like 2 minutes of stretches per day and then just slowly increasing that over time. Like, let's say someone wants to run 5Ks, start by walking 100 meters. If you haven't been able to do that, then next week 200, then next week 400. So yeah, for people with back pain, aches, pains, niggles, I'd just say, just take the first tiny step is really the only realistic thing.
That's, yeah. So in my experience, when I say that and I try and start people off small, like easing them into the gym, very easy exercises, getting their body moving. It's like, but I've seen this on Instagram and I want to do this and I want those results tomorrow.
Yeah.
How do you have that conversation?
It's just all around education as to what actually really works. And what I was talking to you about earlier with what are the things that I see people get wrong in the gym most often, it's having their priorities wrong. And it's a really difficult job to change someone's mindset and expectations and beliefs mainly. But you just got to sort of try and connect with that person and slowly challenge their beliefs in a way that's not too abrasive, so to lose their trust or for them not to like you. Because if someone comes in to me and I do all of my assessments and I go, okay, well, this person doesn't have any bad underlying injury in their back, I'm not just going to say, by the way, you're not actually damaged, so you know how you haven't squatted for 5 years. Let's go do a 60 kilo back squat. Like, they're never going to come back. But it's about getting them to do a 5 kilo back squat and saying, how did that feel afterwards? And slowly teaching them that, that they are able to do it, and just educating them properly that the things that they see on Instagram are actually to grab attention rather than being something that's really effective for fat loss or muscle growing, muscle gains or anything like that.
Trust is a big thing. I'm glad you brought that up. So, and it's something that is very hard to learn. But this is probably for all the coaches listening, how would you, any tips, advice on getting your clients to trust you in that first encounter?
The number one piece of advice would probably be to tell people when you don't know. Like, don't try and reach past your expertise, because you can be very secure in your knowledge and be like, oh, I actually don't know very much about that, but I'll go and have a look, because it's refreshing for someone not to sort of bullshit you, you know what I mean, and pretend that they are better than they are. And I think that does build a sense of trust.
What about appearances and where you meet them, or like whether it's online, phone call, in person, all that sort of stuff?
I try to very much match someone's tone and way of speaking, and try to communicate with them on their terms, rather than to like prove to them like how much I know. It's just about communicating and building rapport, and people also work with people that they like. So I also won't become someone that I'm not to try and meet someone that probably wouldn't like me that much as I normally am, because I'm not the right practitioner for them. And you cannot be the right practitioner for someone and have them have a really good image of you with the way that you communicate that and refer them on as well. But yeah, that's a difficult question. Do you have any tips for me?
No, I think you just hit the nail on the head. Like, just shut up and listen, basically. Ask a question, just listen. And like you said, if you don't know, move them on.
Yeah.
And most of the time, like when, say, a client comes to me and they want to do powerlifting, they want to be, I'll say, I'm like, that's not me. Like, I know how to lift, but I'm not a good powerlifting coach. So it's like, go find somebody else that does that. Or bodybuilding. I don't prep people for bodybuilding shows. And generally when I say that, they're like, oh, okay. But I'll work with you anyway until I can move on and go somewhere else. So, but yeah, for me, it's just like, ask a question, shut up and listen. Like, they're usually just going to talk.
Yeah.
And you just sit there, listen. And like you said, you just learn how to gauge people.
Yeah.
And where they need to be pushed, where you don't push them, all that sort of stuff. Sometimes I get it wrong. Is that something you've learnt how to do, or is that something that gets taught to you through your whole educational history?
Building trust and communicating.
Yeah.
A bit of both. So like
So you started off as a PT?
Started off as a PT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long did you do that for?
I did that for 2 years before I started osteo.
In Melbourne?
Yep. So in Essendon,
Yep.
in the same place I have my clinic, at a group fitness centre. And I didn't think that group fitness was that much chop before I started working there. But there are so many other aspects to your sort of health and fitness journey that are equally as important as, you know, for instance, motivation, engagement, structure, accountability. Like, they're the things that people are asking about this Instagram exercise. They're the things these people should be focusing on. Because you can have the most optimal program in the world with all of the data, but if you're not training it, or you missed on average 2 days a week, like, you're not even actually doing the program. But back to your question, through uni we learnt lots of different communication styles and motivational interviewing and how to challenge people's beliefs in a way that's not too abrasive. But throughout my clinical practice, I've just learnt to keep my mouth shut, to be honest. Because if I try to address every point that a patient brings up, then they're sort of dictating the way that the appointment runs and where we go, and it's always so chaotic. But if I just listen and don't say anything, and I pick, they've said about 50 things, and I pick the top 2, and I'll deal with that at the end. But communication is like, I'm always trying to improve it, because it doesn't matter what you know, if you can't communicate it effectively, you're not helping anyone.
What about appearances? Because like, personal trainers are probably the worst. Like, you get some personal trainers and like, you say you're a personal trainer to some people and they roll their eyes and like, oh great, but other people have a different opinion. So like, I haven't been in the cities, like I've been in Melbourne for 1.5 years, so I've used to like country PTs.
Yeah.
And so very different vibe, like very different gyms as well.
Yep.
And, you know, different isn't bad, it's just different. So like, I went to a doctor like 6 months ago, and I told him what I did for a living, and he rolled his eyes. I thought that hard. I thought he was going to fall out of his chair. I was like, dude, like, and obviously he has an image of a personal trainer.
Yeah.
Like, what am I missing there? Like, is there some people that are just like, I don't understand why that doctor rolled his eyes that hard at me.
Yeah. Like, as in biases against my profession kind of thing, in
Yeah.
the way that people see osteopaths.
I guess that could just be like the same as there's probably osteos online spinning all sorts of BS as well.
Misinformation and pseudoscience is actually a massive issue within my profession, and it makes it really difficult for a lot of us to practice properly, because even though I love the degree, like I studied specialised 5 years full time, is what it takes to be an osteo. And like, I can't work in NDIS, I can't work in aged care, I can't work in hospitals, I can work in sports teams, but only in like the either treatment or high performance sector. Everything else is physio based. I think, honestly, I just try to demonstrate how I'm different from a lot of normal osteos, because I focus a lot more on the lifestyle, rehab, and exercise, and sort of just general health space. And I do the hands-on stuff, but it's like, this is going to make you feel better today so that you can engage in moving more. And it's also about calling out misinformation. And I try to be semi-vocal with that on social media. And it's really funny that like, I am talking about things that are in line with the most updated evidence, but it's controversial within my field, which is really
What do you
funny.
mean?
Well, like, for someone to say on social media, cracking your back, you can't change structure cracking someone's back, or yeah, it's short-term pain relief, but like, we shouldn't do it to all these different demographics, like kids or anything like that. Like, that is seen as controversial from a lot of my osteos that are more structural based rather than exercise and lifestyle based. So more just like treatment is the be all and end all. I think it actually makes it quite easy to stand out more on social media because you're controversial, but it also gives you confidence because you're in line with the most sort of the best evidence.
Yeah. I did like, I went through your page and just watched all your stuff. And a lot of your stuff is, I guess, treating people in a way that they're going to be fine on their own. And that's why I was happy to have you on because, again, sometimes chiros, osteos, physio, it's just like a revolving door of people. Come in, treat, next.
Yeah.
Come in, treat, next.
Yeah.
And PTs can be the same.
Yeah.
Like all my clients, I try and teach them everything I know so they can go and do it on their own.
Amazing.
It's not a good way to be financially, but it is and it isn't if you set it up right. But a lot of PTs are just like, I'll see you for the rest of your life once a week. And it's like, well, that's not what a PT should be doing. And that's why I was happy to have you on. So I guess where I'm going with this, how do you find success in bringing up those topics on social media and posting about them when, you could, bring up those controversial topics?
Yeah. How do I find bringing up what specifically?
Do you ever want to talk about those topics or, say a topic that's controversial to get more likes? And have you done it?
Not that's really controversial to people that have studied within the last 5 years. I try to be controversial to common narratives that we believe. So for instance, like the amount of questions that I get about like, my osteo told me that my hip is out because I slept funny. What am I supposed to do about that? And it's controversial me saying, well, your hip's not out because you can't, it's so hard to dislocate your hip. You have to be in this really janky position, get it pulled that way. And like, you're walking right now and you're not in a 20 out of 10 pain. So like, nothing's out. They're just over medicalizing normal differences in aches, pains and structure and function. But I just don't think I can compromise on my values and talk about things that I don't see as being a positive influence into the healthcare space. Because I think that, especially with, I think that osteos, chiros, physios have actually done had quite a negative impact historically over medicalizing and over demonizing normal differences in structure, symmetry, posture, function, and has created this space where we think that our bodies lack so much resiliency. And that is a big thing about what I'm trying to combat with a lot of my content.
Yeah, and that's sort of where I wanted to go next. So should people be relying on studies and everything for the health, wellness, fitness, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so evidence-based practice is really important, but because evidence-based practice within this realm, like musculoskeletal healthcare, there's not that much research to go off. And so you've also got like, yes, I think we should be basing a lot. If we have studies for it, we should be basing it off that and not our own direct experience over if it's high quality studies from high quality journals. But just because someone cites a study doesn't mean that it's good quality research. Because, for instance, there are a lot of predatory journals that will publish people's research and say that it's peer reviewed when it's just not. Like, do you guys know like Squat U or Andrew Locke? Andrew Locke's a famous Aussie physio, and Squat U's massive on Instagram. They recently published a paper in a predatory journal together, and then it went all over social media like, oh, the research finally says that Discs don't adapt to load. And the peer review process took like 4 hours. And if anyone knows how a peer review process goes, it takes weeks or months and longer for the paper to get published. So for a 12-hour turnaround time, it's like, well, it doesn't matter if what journal that's in. It doesn't matter how quickly that's been published and whether it's peer reviewed. It's like, it's predatory and fake almost.
Why would they do that?
Money. Because like a lot of people have, for instance, Squat U is really into barefoot shoes at the moment. And I love barefoot shoes. I've got barefoot shoes. But what they'll generally do is try and produce research that shows that not having barefoot shoes is bad for you. And so in order for this terrible thing not to happen, you need to purchase these shoes. And like when I first heard about it, I was like, surely we're not actually doing that. Like that's not actually a thing. But yeah, people have vested interests in certain categories or narratives, and they'll supply research to sort of back that up.
Are you talking about Squat University, the page that has the guy does like the
Aaron something.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
See,
So don't look at the shoes I'm wearing because they're the shoes that he's sponsored
he
by.
recommended Jack. Even me, like someone that kind of gets the scientific side of where evidence comes from, thought that they were like a legitimate page to follow to some extent. You know what I mean? But in saying that, I'm definitely not equipped to reading, like, I guess, osteo-oriented papers, more so psych papers.
Definitely.
So how on earth is the general public supposed to, I guess, determine what is fact and what is a publicity stunt? It's nearly impossible, right?
I honestly don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And like the problem is as well, a lot of these people have really good messaging and have really good points. Like Squat University has great points about, like, for instance, heel wedges and how they can be really helpful if you've got the femur that's quite long in proportion to your calf or your tibia. And so, yeah, in order to squat deep, you might just need a heel wedge rather than more dorsiflexion or something like that in your ankle. But you can't really discern, because they have so many good points, what's real and what is BS.
Yeah.
And so I think it's all about listening to people that you do trust and respect, and actually promoting other people that are doing a lot of good within this space. So like there are people that I could recommend to you that you should definitely follow their page, because everything that they spit is like top notch. And there are some people that's like 50-50, like, you know, knees over toes guy, for instance. He's great for a bit, like promoting movement and decatastrophizing just progressive overload. But like tib raises aren't going to fix your everything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So who do you look to when you're trying to understand something, or somebody asks you a question you don't know?
Yeah.
Like, whose sources?
So
outside of, I guess, the medical industry that everybody doesn't have access to, published papers and all that sort of stuff.
So a lot of researchers are on social media, and because they've sort of realised that the disconnect between academia and the real world is just like, we can't be waiting 15 years for what we know works to actually be used anymore. So I try to find researchers in all the different fields that I really like. Like, for instance, if you're looking at bodybuilding, hypertrophy, Brad Schoenfield in New York, Dr. Mike Israel, he's amazing. And there's people in Melbourne as well, like Melbourne Strength Culture are really amazing. They have a podcast too. They're really good. Alec Blennis is someone I reckon every single person should follow on Instagram. He's a vegan hybrid athlete that runs ultra marathons but can also deadlift like, I don't know, 250. And he's just insane. And like I can provide you a heap of accounts as well to put in the show notes and stuff as well.
Yep.
Because I think that these people help you understand how resilient, and it's just so much of a positive way to view your body and your resiliency and capacity. So it's just about trying to promote people that are giving good messaging and try to educate who you know, but because there's no actual way to be able to tell by just looking at a post and not fact checking it really deeply to figure out whether it's true or not.
Yeah, it's scary sometimes. Like,
it's fully freaky.
yeah, like obviously end ranges and getting that stretch activation is really big in the hypertrophy world at the moment. Like Mike Yttertel is just all over it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's good. But then a lot of people come to the gym. It's like, I need to do that. It's like, well, hold on, like
100%.
just chill. We'll work up to it, and we'll get there eventually.
And it's like they're those 1%ers that you're talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Like first eat, sleep, train with intent, and rock up the amount of times you say you're going to rock up. Like, we'll do that first, and then 100% will bias that stretch position. But like until you do that for 3 months.
I think that's why coaching, like I definitely feel the word coaching has somewhat of like less of a strong reputation to say osteo, but I feel like it's so much more important in personal training, in nutrition, in osteo, in psychology even, because you can give out all of this general advice, but like you said, at the end of the day, everyone's body is so very individual. So you really need the coach to be able to assess you, to
Definitely.
actually give you specific advice, right? Before we move on, because I know you have another question, but can you like please explain what the beneficial difference between an osteo and a physio would be? Because I had like a whole hip thing, and I've talked about it a bunch on the podcast, and there was a few people that were following along who had similar issues, and they're like, tell us when you figure it out. But I went to multiple physios over a 4-year span, and then I just decided to go to an osteo because it was recommended to me. Within 5 sessions, I was out of there. They're like, see you later, like you're fixed.
Really?
And the entire experience from from my very first like consultation session to my last, completely different to a physio, and
Cool.
I can't even put into words what the difference is, because I'm not from behind the scenes, I suppose. So I feel like maybe our listeners would benefit from knowing that as well.
So like the main 3 are physio, osteo, chiro. The osteos and physios are really, really similar. Most of the time it'll actually come down to the practitioner that you're seeing and just how they operate specifically. It's like with PTs, you know what I mean? It's really the person. But general differences are, so osteo started first. It started like a really long time ago, and then chiropractic is a branch of osteopathy.
Okay.
And then physiotherapy pretty much just came through and was very, very similar to osteopathy, but from a Western standpoint, or a more medicalized standpoint, because I think they're all Western. So an osteo really views the body as a whole, and it's a very holistic approach. And a physio is sort of more medical and hyper-specific. And a chiropractor, their sort of underlying philosophy is that everything is influenced from the nerves that leave each spinal level. So adjusting the spinal level will sort of fix or treat whatever dysfunction is on the other side of that. But if you look at the way that we actually study now, it's pretty much all very similar. Osteos just do more manual therapy than physios, but we do all of the same rehab and knowledge and stuff. And the way that they're taught is generally more hospital, physios, generally more hospital biased.
Okay.
Where we're all private practice.
Okay, yeah. So like if you were to have surgery, then you would be seeing, after surgery, you'd likely be seeing a physio.
Yeah, so officially through the hospital like streams, you'll just see physios, you won't see osteos. But I also deal with a lot of post-op people.
Amazing.
From private and stuff like that. So you could see either, but yeah, if you go through public stream, you'll see a physio.
Yeah. Nice.
I've got a question for you. that we've both answered. So once a month we do a Q&A. So everybody from the audience sends in a question and we answer a bunch. We actually had a different answer on this one. So I'm curious to see where you end up. Pretty simple though, sort of. Listing the most important going down. What should people focus on the most? Sleep, exercise, or nutrition? And why?
What are their goals?
Yeah.
What are their goals? Sleep, exercise, or nutrition?
Let's just say somebody walked in, I want to feel better, look better, have more energy, live longer life.
I would say exercise. Because they're probably doing the first two already. And so unless they're sleeping like less than 4 hours a night, even if they're not sleeping enough and even if their diet is poor, if they're not exercising at all and you get them exercising, they're going to be physiologically healthier. They're probably going to have better mental health and then better capacity to engage and alter these other things. It depends on what state they come in. But I would say even Alec Blennis actually did a post on this recently, and he was talking about, yes, I sacrifice an extra hours or even 2 hours of sleep because I get up and I run every single morning, but the physiological benefits that he gets from being so much more cardiovascularly fit actually outweighs the detriment of missing an extra hour's sleep. So if you had asked me that 3 months ago, I might come up with a different answer, but I think that eating and sleeping, in order to be alive as a human being, that's kind of a given. You have to do that already. So if they're not exercising, that would be my number one priority.
Like Mike Uzatel got asked a similar question on a podcast I was listening to, and he's basically just like, sleep more.
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you?
That one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that one.
When we had that question in the original Q&A episode, there was so much controversy in the comments about the order of it, because it's like so personal, right? Like to
100%.
the person, and they're all equally as important as one another.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
You can't, like, without proper context, the answer will be there for you if you actually know the person. If you ask three questions, what are you eating? How much are you sleeping? What's your exercise like? Like, what are you doing for exercise? Then you'll know the perfect answer to that question. But they're also, they're the absolute pillars of health and wellness.
My answer was similar to yours. Just start exercising. Like you said, your mental, like, you just want to improve the others after a little while because you want to get better at exercising and all that sort of
100%.
stuff.
How about you? What was your answer?
I don't remember do you remember what my answer was?
Sleep.
Because I feel like I had very good logic behind it too, but now I can't remember it. I feel like
What's your answer now then?
I think originally I said sleep because I know from a personal perspective and a coaching perspective that people can make better decisions when they have had enough sleep. Like,
Definitely.
It's much harder to make good food choices and to get yourself to the gym when you're sleep deprived. So I'm pretty sure that's why I was stuck on sleep as my main one.
Yeah.
But I'm also very fussy about sleep too. So I feel like personally it's...
Yeah. And all of them are so important. Like, you know, back to why you asked why coaching before. When I'm treating someone, I'm generally coaching them. Like, if they've got complex pain or long-standing pain, we look at their sleep, we look at their nutrition. I've got a dietitian that I refer to. We look at their stress levels, and I care so much more about them than what I'm doing with my hands on the table in terms of massage, cracking backs, and all that kind of thing. Like, it's pretty much that side of things is really helpful with recovery and to get someone moving again. But, like, it is also to build that rapport so I can really coach them.
Yeah.
So,
All right. One more fun one before we jump into some pain questions, because I really want to go into the pain topic. But if you could only do 10 exercises for the rest of your life, only 10?
yep.
What would they be?
Oh, man. Okay.
So yes, 10 exercises. What do you got for us?
Does this person...
No, for you.
Do I have access to a gym?
Yeah. Yep. You can have access
Yeah.
to any equipment,
Okay.
any gym, any space.
Yep. I'm going to go slight incline dumbbell bench.
Why incline?
I just like it more. Honestly, just
You're
like
doing it for the
more.
rest of your life.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I would do, this is good, I would also do chest supported seated row.
Mm-hmm.
Chest supported because I think it's less fatiguing because you don't have to do like the isometric of holding your body up the whole time. If it's chest supported, you're just utilizing your back. Weighted chin-ups, definitely. Weighted dips, 4.
Mm-hmm.
I would also do... Oh, what squat movement would I do?
Tib raises aren't going to make the list.
Tib raises are not going to make the cut. Absolutely not. I'd probably choose Bulgarian split squats or hack squat.
Okay.
I just love hack squat.
Wait, what's a hack squat again?
It's the one where you get to stay really upright, so it's really quad dominant, and it's kind of like on this 45-degree angle. Your head's up this way,
Oh, yeah.
and it sort of just goes
Yeah.
straight
Like a
up and down.
reverse leg press.
Yeah.
type
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, like a reverse leg press. Just
So Bulgarian and hack squat, or just one or the other?
just hack squat.
Okay, 5.
No, just Bulgarians.
Okay.
Because hack squat doesn't do much for glutes. 5, I would do... I've already said dips, have I?
Yep.
Running,
Yeah.
definitely, because like I actually have only really paid respect to how important cardiovascular fitness is so seriously in the last couple of years. 6, chin-ups, dips. I think I've done 6. I would do like calisthenics rings work.
Oh yeah.
It's just so much fun. And I think having to utilize body weight and calisthenics type work makes you focus on the knowledge behind how to make an exercise difficult rather than just being able to slap more weight on a bar. I would do calf raises,
Any particular kind?
standing, just because I want big juicy calves. No, I would do standing just because...
Loaded in any way?
Yeah, loaded, like as heavy as I possibly could.
How do you do that? Smith machine?
Nah, you can get calf raise machines.
Oh yeah.
Standing ones
Yeah,
where
of
the
course,
pads
yep,
are
yep.
over your shoulders.
Yep.
And just go as heavy as you possibly can with that one.
2 more.
2 more. I go push-ups because they're just so accessible and can be done anywhere, and handstands because they're a lot of fun.
Wow, that was a wild deck of cards.
Oh, no. I'm going back. I'm taking out push-ups and I'm putting in a Zercher Jefferson curl deadlift.
Okay.
Have you guys seen them?
I have.
No?
So, do you just explain what it is for everybody?
So it's similar to a stiff leg deadlift, but instead of trying to keep your back really rigid and straight and good form, you like fold down and it looks like the ugliest deadlift you've ever done.
And then the barbell's in your elbows.
And the barbell
holding
is in
like-
your elbows so that you can get that extra range and go all the way to the ground.
Is there one of those on your feed?
Yeah, I love
Okay,
it. It's
I know
so
that one.
much fun.
Why?
We have sort of demonized spinal flexion and we never train it. And it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy, right? When you're deadlifting, everyone talks about don't lose your form, you'll hurt your back. And at the moment, that's kind of true because if you have always deadlifted with a really rigid back and one day under a certain level of fatigue, you're unable to hold that and then you round your back. those structures that you're now stressing have never been trained because you've never lifted with that technique before. And so they go, oh, I knew I shouldn't have, I shouldn't have lost my form. And it's like, well, actually, if you weren't so serious about having a perfectly straight back every time you deadlifted, you would be prepared for that, you know? And so I just really like them, and I really like, it absolutely tortures my whole lower back and glutes and hamstrings, and is just really fun.
Yeah.
Have you done them?
I have.
Do you like them?
Yeah, because they've been all over social media.
True.
Yeah, I like them. I like a good Xerxes squat as well. Probably don't do it as often as I should.
Yeah.
I'm sometimes scared to look like a fool in the gym and do things that are different. You know what I mean? Do you think most people are like that? Because I haven't been training for that long.
If you do one of those, everybody's like, damn, that's hard. Like, everybody's like, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
That's what I think
guess.
everybody's thinking anyway.
And like, yeah. Well, I get a few giggles. But like, honestly, this is also what we were talking about before. People focus on like what exercise. It doesn't have to even be an exercise that exists. If you progressively overload it and you're doing some random whack movement, like, you're gonna increase muscle mass, you're gonna get stronger within that specific movement. Like, it doesn't really matter what you do as long as you follow a certain set of principles rather than exercises themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like, that's sort of like, how important is technique, and like, what is technique? Like, I often see people in the gym and they got the worst technique in the world, but they turn up every day doing the same exercise in the worst possible way, and they look great. They move like, in the movements they are doing, they look like they move really well.
Yeah.
And I always have this conversation with another coach that works at the gym. I'm like, are we wrong? Like, because again, especially as a PT, it's like, don't squat below parallel. Don't bring the bar down to your chest because it's all safety and this, and you can hurt people. But it's like, well, why not move through so much? Like, the other day I did the lateral raise all the way to the, touch the dumbbell, and everybody's like looking at me going, wow, you don't raise your hands above your shoulders. I'm like, what? Like, yeah.
Technique doesn't really matter for injury, but it matters a lot for performance. So like, if you deadlift with a rounded back, but you've done it from your very first deadlift up to 150 kilos in a graded progressive fashion, you're not more predisposed to injury than someone that is deadlifted with what stereotypically looks like amazing technique, as long as they've followed the same principles as you. Past the point where, like, let's say you drop into a squat and your technique is actually so bad that you fall over and you like hurt yourself that way, in terms of like you executed it incorrectly and you fell and the barbell hit you, it matters in that way. But there are not many other scenarios where I can think of technique really mattering inherently for injury risk. Because the way that I also rehab people is, I'm like, what hurts you the most? What can't you do? And you let tissues settle, but then you sort of get them to do the thing that hurts them, but it's the dose that dictates the poison, right? So they hurt themselves doing a 150 kilo deadlift. What are we doing week one? Deadlifting, but with a 20 kilo bar. But for performance, like, the positions that your joints go into and how much force your muscles are able to apply based on that will mean that slightly better joint positioning means that you can lift heavier. But yeah, it doesn't really matter from an injury risk standpoint. And that's probably pretty controversial, but I'm pretty solid on that one, actually.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on that, and I'm definitely now just like, as long as you're moving safely with a decent weight, go for it, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. And the biggest problem with health and fitness space is that people don't move enough. So why are we creating these barriers? People being like, am I doing this right? I don't think I'm confident doing this until I do it in front of my PT so they can tell me I'm doing it right. It's like, that's a barrier to moving more. why are we creating these unnecessary barriers?
Yeah, 100%. And that's like, again, let's move into the pain thing. So a lot of people are scared of pain, but then like, what's the difference between, you know, doing a bicep curl and like, I use that example all the time. Guys will love to get a bicep pump and go until it absolutely burns.
Yeah.
But in one of your posts, you said the same thing. They'll do a back exercise, get a pump in the back, and they're like, oh my God, my back's broken.
Yeah.
I can't do that anymore.
Yeah. It's wild. It's all about our sort of understanding and beliefs about what's happening. And like, this is massive within my profession, is actually helping people understand all different types of pain and be aware of what they should be worried about and what they shouldn't be. And it's like we've demonized this idea of back pain, that any back pain at all is a bad thing and something to be worried about. And like, yeah, if you do these Jefferson curls, like, your back's going to be sore. Like, my back's sore today because I did them yesterday. And that's a totally cool thing. My pecs are also sore because I did chest. But because we have this demonization of normal differences in aches and pains, that, people freak out. And a lot of my job is honestly like reassuring people that they're fine and they can continue doing what they were doing, but they just need to be a bit smarter with how they progressively work into it. And
I don't know if this is something you've experienced as well, but lately I've just had a lot of people coming in being afraid of getting injured. Like, just, I can't do that because I'm going to get injured. And if I get injured, that's it. I'm done. I'm finished.
Yeah.
It's like, I've never, again, it could have just been moving to the city and having exposure to a whole new demographic, but I feel like that's just getting more and more. And again, once you get people moving, they, you know, in the right way, they're fine. They keep moving.
Yeah.
But have you noticed that as well? People are just super afraid of injuries or pain.
Massively.
And to the point where they won't do anything.
Yeah. And I do think that is sort of somewhat a result of my profession and the way that we previously used to tackle things.
What do you mean?
Like, oh, you get pain with that, or you better not do that because, you know, you've been playing cricket, and I know that's a asymmetrical sort of activity, and I can feel that your right hip's a bit higher than your left, and we sort of over medicalize and over demonize all of these normal phenomenon like aches and pains with training. And people also don't have a very good understanding that, like, pretty much every injury heals in about 3 months. So like, and a lot of people are also so scared of getting injured and not being able to train because they think that if you strain your quad that you can't train upper body. Do you know what I mean? You can always do something. But I definitely see it within my work, and it's a really difficult job for me because I'm pretty much telling people that are coming to me and paying me money because they think they need to see me. I'm like, you don't really need to be doing all of this. But I've actually had to change the way I do that because, God, try telling someone that. You just have to show them. You just have to prove to them. And I would say that would be my piece of advice for PTs that get people coming in with the same thing, just constantly scared of being injured, because it is more popular to sort of have that frame of mind now. Like, I see it more often. And just by demonstrating to them that they can, and just taking increasing things really slowly and progressively, like, that's going to be the best way to increase someone's confidence and then build momentum with their training as well.
You got any questions on pain, or where do you want to go?
Where do you want to go talking about pain? I feel like you probably have more of an idea of what the general public needs to understand a bit more about experiencing it.
Yeah, if I could get one message across to anyone that's listening to this and looking to engage more in the health and fitness space, is that pain does not mean injury. They are two separate things, and pain is like an alarm signal of a perceived need to protect your body. So, like, really cool study they did. I'm going to get some of the stats slightly wrong, but it won't matter for the story. they had people sit down and they touched the back of their arm with a like cold rod. It was like maybe -5 degrees Celsius or something like that. And they would flash one of 2 different colors of lights on this big light right in front of the people. And when the light flashed red, they perceived the rod as hot and really painful, and like they thought it was damaging their skin. But when the light flashed green, then they didn't experience any similar level of pain, didn't think it was hot, anything like that. So our body's perceived need to protect ourselves will bring on pain regardless of what's actually happening at the tissue level. For instance, 90% of back pain that you see in clinics is non-specific, meaning we cannot find any damaged tissues responsible for someone's pain. But it is like the lead cause of disability and money spent within the healthcare system out of all musculoskeletal injuries. It's like one of the leading causes of disability, but we can't find anything broken. So it's like, even if you have a look at athletes have way lower levels of back pain compared to the rest of the population, but they have way higher levels of disc degeneration in their spine and degenerative joint disease. And so we need to really separate. Just because you're in pain, that doesn't mean that you're damaged, and it's actually a totally normal thing to experience pain. It's about reframing and trying to understand why that is, and that's where someone like myself or like a good coach can actually really help them, because you will have more insight into, okay, this and this and this symptom, maybe it is damage, or actually more looks like this and this and this, which means it's just pain without damage. And I think that if personal trainers and coaches in general are able to make that distinction early on, so many more people are going to be so much more active for longer and not be stuck out of the gym seeing their chiro or physio or osteo for like 6 months of treatment.
Is there any, I guess, do's or don'ts for people with pain? Like that, not even phantom pain, but that pain in the back when there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Like
rest.
Yeah.
No rest. Rest is like one of the number one things that you shouldn't do for back pain. So like laying in bed, avoiding activity, it is the number one thing you shouldn't do for back pain. And that's like chronic, non-specific back pain. If you've just like really hurt yourself, like falling or in a snowboarding or a car accident or even lifting, and it's like, but moving is the best thing that you can do to help with pain. Moving in as manageable of a way as possible, as much as you can. Like even post-surgery, they're trying to get people out of bed next day, same day now, rather than leaving them even for 3 days, because outcomes are so much better when they're moving more. And yeah.
Because your body's response from exercise helps with reducing pain as well.
100%.
Yeah. And it is very hard to communicate that to people when they're in pain.
Yeah. A good one that I'd recommend for people with back pain is you get them to do a really light Jefferson curl. So like really not light, rounded back deadlift that they're fully freaked out by doing, but you just give them a 2.5 kilo dumbbell. You get them to do 3 reps. The first 2 reps, they'll be like, oh no, I can feel it. It's not necessarily pain, but I can feel it seizing up. And you just go, just do a couple more for me. Now stand up. How do you feel? Do you feel better or worse? I'm not asking about during the rep. I'm asking about after the rep. Are you in more pain or does it feel better? If they're in more pain, I mean, you could maybe get them to go again, see how they go. But if they're in less pain, you don't even need to tell them, well, if you've done the rep and it was painful during, but now you actually feel a lot better, what is that telling you? And that's something that any coach can get people to do with lower back pain.
Will Pilates fix my back? What's your take on the reformer bed, like reformer Pilates?
I have only done a little bit of reformer myself, I personally think that anything that's getting people moving and people love and is engaging, then like that's cool. If they want to do more of that, that's amazing. But if people's goals are to put on muscle mass or get really cardiovascularly fit, like it's not intense enough or progressible enough, in my opinion, because you can only add so much load. And, you know, like I was saying with calisthenics before, once you build that knowledge, then you can stress out the body in a meaningful way, but it's never going to be intense as lifting heavy or running far. And like, it's really popular within my profession too. Like,
it's really popular in any gym everywhere.
I honestly think that it's really popular because you can have a heap of members at a gym and not take up a very big space with not very expensive equipment. So the money that you can make from Pilates alone, rather than having to buy hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilos of iron to be able to lift, I think that's a factor as to why it's so popular. But at the same time, there's also some research that has shown that Pilates is really effective for non-specific lower back pain, potentially even more than other exercise. But the totality of the evidence says that just any exercise is equally good at dealing with back pain. So I wouldn't say it's any silver bullet. What do you guys think of Pilates?
Yeah, same thing. I think it's a great tool to have.
Yeah, it's
definitely
good.
If you enjoy it, do it.
Yeah,
but don't rely on it as the only thing.
And don't think that you can get absolutely jacked with just doing Pilates.
Yeah.
I feel like because you do get a burn, but it's not the same burn as lifting weights, right? So people think it's doing heaps of work, but it's just burning.
Yeah, and this is like the proxy of people associating a burn with an effective exercise.
Yes.
It's like you can put a band around your knees and do a glute bridge, and you're like, this is mad. This is a mad stimulus, you know what I mean? But it's not doing anything because they're focusing on how much does this burn rather than what level of mechanical tension is applied here, like what level of metabolic stress are my muscles experiencing, and they're the two main drivers of muscle growth.
It's the same as, you know, sweating and fat burning.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's
if it was sweating, I should be the leanest thing ever because I'm sweating right now. I'm sweating a
Jack
lot.
I constantly sweat. Yeah. All right. Couple of questions to wrap up. So you've obviously been in the industry for a while. You manage a BFT. If you could go back to the very start, well, first of all, why did you get into personal training?
I got into personal training because it was in line with my osteo degree and I just wanted to help people, and I was passionate about health and fitness in general. I've been training myself for a long time, background in sports, and just thought that it would really help me with my education and knowledge moving forwards as an osteo, because I also think that like a lot of like my degree, even though rehab is and exercise is the most effective thing, out of 5 years full time, we did 1 unit on rehab. And so unless you did your own training, you don't know how to progressively overload exercise unless it's the template stuff that you were given at uni.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
All right. So that will play good into my question. If you could go back now, say, talk to yourself or somebody that's looking at getting into osteo, personal training, any sort of coaching someone, what would you change in your like experiences? If you've experienced things you've learnt, too late, too little, if you could go back and say, tell yourself, start looking at this rather than this.
Honestly, I'd probably tell myself to go be a physio that just works exactly the same way as I do now, because like it's the name that gets you so much more opportunity if you're a physio rather than an osteo, especially within our healthcare system. And I feel like it's a constant battle for me to show people how I'm always focused on lifestyle change and sort of general health and exercise and rehab. And I'd also say to work on your communication equally as much as you work on your knowledge. because I know so many amazing osteos that I went to uni with that are incredible practitioners, and their knowledge is like off the charts. But some people don't have the ability to communicate what they know effectively and to actually buy that engagement. So yeah, communication to me is something that I will always work on and would promote everyone working on.
How do you work on it?
So you can do courses. I'm currently doing stuff to improve my written communication, to get more engagement and buy-in. But also, like, I think that most of my communication has come from being surrounded by really good friends and good people and good communicators. But they also do teach it to a certain level within uni. And yeah, communicate to as many different people as you can, as oftenly as you can, in as many different ways as you can, because it doesn't matter how many books you read about communication if you don't practice it.
Yeah, 100%. I was going to say that as well. Like, if I could go back now, when I first started, I'd just like learn how to communicate. But like, you got to learn by doing.
100%.
So,
because you never understand the nuance and the ways that you can get it wrong in certain scenarios until you've done it.
What about on the business side of things? Like, you've managed a BFT. Like, is there anything you know now where you could have went back and saved yourself some time and money managing?
You guys seen Ted Lasso?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like to be more like Ted Lasso.
Yeah, okay.
It's just like, you don't, unless you really approach scenarios with compassion and understanding, you're not going to get behavior change. You're not going to, like, I'm talking about managing people specifically, because managing people is tough. It's the best and the worst part of your job, people. But yeah, I think that putting in that extra work to communicate with someone in the way that they need to be communicated with, because I've gone through periods where, like, I should just be able to be direct. I shouldn't have to worry. Like, I'm very matter of fact, and I shouldn't have to be to do all of this extra work to communicate something that could just be said very directly. But the amount of work that comes after you do that, if you don't do it properly, is like just a massive headache. But another piece of advice I would say is to try and build relationships within your industry and see how you can actually contribute positively to the people around you in your industry. So you're not competing against them, you're working with them. Because if you're competing against them, they're not going to help you or want to be around you. But if you're finding a way in which you can help improve their business and their clients' lives, then like, you are such an asset and just a positive influence when to these people.
That's probably been the biggest thing going from country to city. Yeah, having the population, like in the country, smaller population, so all the gyms, all the fitness people are really like against each other. Although I tried to sort of expand it out at one point and get everybody involved, because, you know, if all the gyms in a small town work together, it's better for the town.
Amazing.
But didn't really work out. But then moving to the city, it's just like, there's just like, 5 million people in Melbourne. Like, I don't have to stress about, that one person that walks in the door. I can't let them go anywhere else. So it's been a relief and good, because we can have these conversations. I can talk to other coaches, and there's no, I'm still in your, that's
100%.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, last one. So fail more is on my shirt.
I love it.
Because we both believe people are afraid of failing, and they don't start anything, they won't do anything. Like we talked about with pain or, getting injured, they're afraid of that failure, so they won't even start. But failing there's no such thing as failing. Like, we just say fail more, so you do more stuff and realise that you don't actually fail. So if you can think of, whether it's fitness, business, life, whatever, what's a failure that everybody else would have seen as a failure, but you've seen as a success because you've learnt so much from it?
Breaking up with a patient. Breaking up with a patient is something that's kind of confronting when you realise that you're not the right person for them and you feel like that you failed them and yourself. But it's actually a massive win to have the security and ability to be like, I actually don't think I'm the practitioner for you. I think what you need is something like this, and let's just find that for you. Because if you're having to deal with someone that doesn't really vibe with you and you don't agree on things and it's just sort of like constantly confrontational, like it's not good for anyone in that scenario, and you're actually doing the best thing by them by saying, hey, I actually think you'd be better with like someone like this because I'm over here and we're just sort of not really gelling. But it's like, especially having my own business and telling someone, look, I don't think this is going to work. Difficult, but yeah, I actually think a win rather than a failure.
How do you, just following up for myself anyway, how do you manage that, I guess, failure of clients? Like, because it plays on my mind a lot. Like, you know, I take on my clients because I want to help them. Sometimes I'm not helping them the best I could for whatever reason. It plays on my mind.
Yeah.
It's hard to turn it off sometimes. Like, do you get that? How do you wind down? Do you shut things out?
Yeah. One of my housemates is actually clinical psych and had this conversation with me about how we're not responsible for their improvement. We're there to facilitate and to provide aid and help them. But like, it's not our responsibility to force this person to do all of these different things. And like, I was talking about it specifically about how do I change someone's mind about this really negative like thing, because if I challenge them on this, they're just going to go and I'm not going to be able to help them. And she said, well, as a psych, like, we know that it's not our responsibility to fix this person, but it's our responsibility to contribute to the betterment of their overall journey. And so like, for instance, with me, if someone thinks that their back's like broken, they've got a fracture, or like they're really catastrophizing, if I go along with that, I'm contributing negatively because I'm positively reinforcing the fact they have these really bad beliefs about themselves. And I probably won't see them again if I say, hey, I know that this is probably the first you're going to hear this, but I actually don't think anything's wrong. Like, I can't find any evidence of anything being damaged. I might lose them as a patient, but ultimately that's going to plant the seed for if in 2 years they see another practitioner and they say exactly the same thing, be like, oh. So yeah, I think taking away the responsibility, and it is a job, like, and you just do what you can do and sort of just try and let the rest go. But man, easier said than done.
Yeah, definitely. We say the same thing all the time. Like, we're just here to help people do their own journey. We can't do it for them. They got to just listen when they're ready. They listen and do it. But yeah, it's very hard sometimes.
Oh man, yeah, very difficult.
All right. So I guess everybody listening, you've listened this far, you've enjoyed the episode. So make sure you copy the show link, send it to a friend or family member, because they're going to get something out of it as well. And they can find you. Where can people find you online and in person?
So Instagram is pain.coaching. My business, my osteo clinic in Essendon, is Overcome Osteo. So www.overcomeosteo.com. And they're my main two ways of getting in contact, because I don't think this TikTok thing is going to be happening for much longer.
Yeah, that's Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I've enjoyed this. It's been great.